Hey everyone. Recently, our Shure rep from McFadden Sales came into the store. We got a chance to sit down and talk about some of the classic products and some of the new products that Shure has available. Some of the legendary stuff like the SM7, the SM58, and the SM57, and a new product called the MV7. In order to not lose any of the important information that we went over, I've split this video up into a small series. Each one is going to focus on a different topic of the microphones, some traditional uses, what you would expect to hear and see, and some non-traditional uses, and just a whole lot of really good information that you can use for things like picking your next microphone, getting started with home recording, getting started with a YouTube channel, just like the one here, or getting started with something like podcasting. And hopefully this video gives you some good information on choosing the right microphone for your project. With all of that, here is my conversation with Ryan from McFadden Sales and Shure Microphones. Each of these four microphones has their intended use. Right. And we've kind of touched a little bit on some of the versatility. You know, the SM7 is a vocal microphone. Yeah. But you had talked about how they work great for miking a cabinet, bass, and guitar. Mm-hmm. The 58 and the 57, as we're doing this interview now,
that's what we're talking into.
We're talking into them, and this is not normally how these things are used.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really cool thing here. Now, the MV7, it even says it right here, it's the podcast microphone. Right. Does that mean that I can't record vocals with this?
Oh, good question. There's no rules. You know, this is, in my opinion, music is all about experimentation and having fun and trying new things out, and, when I was in school, learning about audio engineering and all that stuff, the SM7B was besides the 57 was the first professional level microphone that I picked up, and I used it to record my guitar amp.
Yeah.
Which it kind of seems anathema almost, right? Because you see everyone using it for, radio or broadcast and stuff like that, for vocals in the studio. A lot of the music I like, there's some aggressive vocals.
Sure.
And, the SM7B smooths out aggressive vocals. And then you'll have the condenser microphone right next to it for, really delicate, singing, sort of passages. But being able to experiment and try out the SM7B on a, for instance, like a Mesa Boogie amp and cabinet, that does some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And especially when you're combining it with other mics, use it with a condenser, use it with a ribbon, everything complements.
Right.
And with the MV7, you could absolutely, don't be, stuck in the thought that because it says podcast on the box, that's what you should only use it for. It's an extremely versatile microphone, especially because of all those other features that we went over. But if you're just using it as a microphone with an XLR out, fantastic. You're going to get shockingly good results compared to the SM7B with the MV7.
Okay. So with that versatility, obviously all of these microphones, like we had said, they have their different intended use.
Right.
So just at their surface, who would be getting each of these? Just the general.
Yeah.
Like who's going to benefit the most from a couple of these?
Okay, we'll start with the MV7 since it's the the new kid on the block, so to speak. So because of all those little cool perks and features that I mentioned earlier with the companion app and all that stuff, that's great. The MV7 is fantastic for a beginner. You don't need an audio interface. There is a headphone jack on there, so you can use headphones with it, earbuds, and it controls the input. You can monitor your input from the microphone, just you speaking into it, so you get instant feedback from that. But also it controls your monitor mix, so the output from your computer or your laptop, whatever it is. And it's practically an all-in-one inclusive solution. It gives you the control, the dynamics control and the tone shaping that you need to kind of perfect your sound. But it has the headphone out, you have XLR and USB outputs. So depending on what your need is and what your situation is, it's going to work. It's going to be a fantastic solution there.
It's essentially an all-in-one.
An all-in-one thing. So anyone who's starting out or someone that needs, kind of a no-nonsense solution where you don't need to think about a lot of that stuff, MV7 is the great go-to. And you can add on, right? If you wanted to use, have four MV7s up for, a group podcast sort of a thing, yes, it's perfect for that. That's exactly what it's designed for. Now, transitioning to the SM7B, it is I would say a more heavy-duty microphone. So if you're doing audio production, you're doing a very serious podcast, you're doing very serious Zoom calls, where you need that pro level of audio quality. That's why it's the go-to.
That's why it's
there is there's definitely a benefit with the SM7B. They're both very versatile, but I would say that SM7B, if you're getting into more like audio production, and this is just my opinion on it, if you needed a microphone that can do it all, SM7B is, my first choice for that. SM57 is, definitely in that list as well.
And it's definitely, it's a classic for a reason.
Exactly. And actually, quick thing. So we're talking through the 57 and the 58. They're practically the same microphone.
Yeah.
The 58 has the ball grill on the end and, a little bit of like, windscreen sort of, stuff in there. But it's literally the same mic as the SM57.
So while we're touching on the 57 and the 58 too, I know we said we weren't going to go too hard into them, but I do want to give them a little bit of love because they are great. They are fantastic. We've all known about them. We've used them. Even when if I'm running a DI and I'm doing a full virtual amp, I'm still using the 57 setting on the CAC Sims. It's everywhere. It's everywhere you go. With that though, since we're talking about, podcasting and those kind of things, we know what these things can do in a studio setting and in a live setting. There's no question there. Can we use these for podcasting?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question. And if you are on a budget and you want to get into it with an even lower barrier to entry, from a dollar's perspective, SM58's killer. It's still a dynamic microphone. It has a cardioid pickup pattern. So it still has the off-axis rejection, that the SM7B and the MV7 do. It may not be at the same, degree of that. It may not be as extreme. You can still use the 58 or 57. I mean, I mentioned, other artists using the SM7B as a vocal microphone in the studio. There's videos of Michael Jackson using a 57 as his vocal mic. It's like, a lot of people, forget about that heritage that these microphones have. So again, I said it earlier, there's no rules. It's experimentation. There's nothing wrong with having, 4 SM57s as your podcasting mics. There's nothing wrong with that. You may not get, all the stuff I mentioned, like the off-axis stuff. Especially the MV7 has the companion app and the tone shaping and all that. You could absolutely use that.
But it'll still get your voice through clear. It'll sound good. It'll reject some of that background noise. And actually, while we're talking about that, here in a little bit, I'm going to set a condenser mic on the stage here and just record the noise room or the noise in the room versus these two. What you guys can't hear right now is we're sitting right next to a highway, and there have been cars going by this whole time.
This is true.
And this is true. Yeah, these are blocking that sound out. You should not be hearing that at all. So I'll give you a little bit of a difference of what you can hear.
Totally.
So you know what we're talking about when we're talking about that background noise cancellation. I'll insert that here in a little bit.
Another thing about, this is just Shure in general. One of the reasons Shure is great, as far as like a company heritage and legacy and what they have out there as far as products are concerned, but they don't give, they're not coloring your tone all that much. The way that I describe it is what you put into the microphone is what you're going to get out of it. And there's plenty of mics out there that have a signature sound. They're able to color and affect the tone in such a way where, there's tube mics out there, that have a very distinct sound, and that's fantastic if you want that. But a lot of folks don't. They want something that is, they can rely on it. They know what they're getting into. They know what they're going to get out of the microphone, and that's Shure across the board, in my opinion. It's the transparency. It's that purity of the original signal, and that's why they're one of the longest running microphone companies in existence.
You can't like we've said a couple times already. You can't see an image of a studio session or somebody podcasting or anything like that without seeing these microphones. You've seen this microphone 100 times before you even knew what it was. It's just an iconic look. It's an iconic sound, and they are standards for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And to just throw in another thing here, you can use a 58 on a guitar cabinet.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's probably would sound pretty darn good.
Probably.